Hello and welcome to my YouTube channel. Just completed the 1974 season, and it was a doozy. So I'm going to spend some time talking about that first before we move on to transitioning over to 75. The Oakland Raiders were the champions. Not a big shock. You know, the Steelers won it in real life. If they beat the Vikings in New Orleans. That was the first year the Steelers, the first year of the Steelers dynasty, if you will. They were, really, strength of that team obviously was the steel curtain, the defense. They were efficient on offense. They had, Terry Bradshaw was the quarterback. They had Frank Harris. Their receiving core was just starting to come into its own. They were still mostly, I think, rookies. Swan and Stallworth weren't even starters, I don't think, at that point. Still Ronnie Shanklin and I think Frank Lewis were the two wideouts. But the defense was stellar. You had Jack Lambert was a rookie, and you had Mean Joe Green, L.C. Greenwood. You had Jack Ham, Mel Blunt. Really the core of that steel curtain was already in place. And in this replay, they were the best team in the AFC. Matter of fact, they had the best record in the league at 13-1. But unlike in real life, they could not get past the Oakland Raiders. The Raiders beat them in the regular season, and then they would meet again in the AFC Championship game. In all I can say is it. If this universe is aware of this other universe, boy, it's like the revenge for the Immaculate Reception. It was a game. Let's go ahead and take a look here. There was the final of the Super Bowl. It was a blowout, and we'll talk about San Francisco here in a moment because that's another shocker. But let's look at the divisional playoffs. You had the Steelers winning convincingly over Denver, which was another surprise team, getting to the playoffs. And then the Raiders just barely got by Buffalo, divisional round. And then, okay, so 17-14 in the AFC title game. So what happened in this ball game was that the Steelers had led. They were up 14-0 late in the ball game. In fact, it was less than 2 minutes to go. And the Raiders were able to rally. They first were able to score on a touchdown from Stabler to Bob Moore, 10 yards to make it 14-7. That was with 1:23 to go. 1:23 to go. They still had all three of their timeouts, and that was key because they did do the onside kick. Steelers recovered, and you figured even with three timeouts, boy, you're still going to have probably less than a minute to go, right around a minute to go. If you stop the Steelers, make them go 3 and out, and force them to punt. And so they did that. Steelers punted, and they pinned the Raiders deep in their own end. I believe they were at their own 3 or 4 yard line. We could look at the play-by-play, but I don't want to spend too much time on this. But most of you who follow this channel probably saw the game. And if you didn't, I'm just kind of summarizing it with commentary here and acknowledging just the sheer craziness of it all. 12 seconds to go. Let's watch this real quick. They were at their own 37-yard line, and Stabler's just throwing it up for grabs here at this point. 21 seconds. Throws it up. The tight end, Bob Moore, somehow comes down with it and gets out of bounds. So the Raiders are now with a first down around the 11-yard line. And really, I think it's the very next play. It's the very next play. 12 seconds to go. And Stabler finds Branch in the end zone, tie it, just completely silenced the River Stadium crowd. Unbelievable. So the game goes into overtime. The Raiders scoring 2 touchdowns in the final minute, 23 seconds. The Raiders got the ball first. They went 3 and out. Steelers got the ball. Then this happens. And by the way, Preston Pearson, God bless him, one of the great players of that era. Played for 3 different teams. But he was like the first player, I think, to get 5 Super Bowl rings. Wasn't it? He had one with Baltimore, one with Dallas, and I think he had 2 with Pittsburgh. So he had 4. But he was replacing Franco Harris, who was hurt in the final week of the season. He fumbled the ball. The Raiders were able to take it and were able to win it on this field goal in overtime, send them to New Orleans for the Super Bowl. So that was shocking. And then we get to the late game, and you've got the Cardinals and the 49ers. First of all, the 49ers, you think to yourself, they had no business being there. I don't know how they got there, but they beat out the Rams. The Rams severely underperformed during the regular season. It's not the first time they've done that. I don't know what it is about the Rams, but they just seem to have a dark cloud over their heads. Seems like I have them rated pretty high in most of these seasons, but they just underperform. And they did so again in '74. That was one of their best seasons in real life. They finished 7-7, a game behind the Niners, who obviously overperformed. I think in real life they were maybe 6-8, 7-7, somewhere around there. Not a great team. They were led by Tom Owen, who incidentally was hurt in the final game, I think, of the season, or the final couple games of the season. So he's out for the playoffs. He's been replaced by a guy named Joe Reed, who would later go on to play for Detroit. But Joe Reed is the starting quarterback for San Francisco. They also lost Danny Abramowitz during the regular season, so they really are depleted a bit on offense. They've got Gene Washington, and he plays a big, big role in their success here down the stretch. The other surprise here was the Vikings completely crap in the bed, 7-7, 3 games back from Green Bay, who obviously over and got into the playoffs. They also did it without their starting quarterback. They finished up with John, not John, is it Joe Concannon? Is that the right name? Anyway, he was a veteran quarterback for the Bears, who led the Packers into the playoffs. Dallas missed the playoffs, which is realistic. Washington and St. Louis, life, they were swapped. The Cardinals were the division leaders, but they both had the same record and both got into the playoffs. But fortunately for both, they were upset. Oops, I don't want to go there yet. They were both upset in the divisional round. The Redskins losing at home to San Francisco. They were just completely outscored. And the Cardinals got by Green Bay, but then got to the NFC title game, and almost a carbon copy of the earlier game with the Raiders and the Steelers. I mean, the Cardinals had this game won. They were up 26-7 in the fourth quarter. Let's see at what point. So Jim Bakken kicked that field goal, make it 26-7 with just around 5 minutes to go. And then everything turned around San Francisco. They get a big pass here to Tom Mitchell. Wilbur Jackson out of the backfield scores on a 29-yard pass makes it 26-13. They missed the extra point. Later on, they convert a fourth down. Then they score again. So now there's 2 minutes to go, and they're within a touchdown, within 6 points. Then they recovered the onside kick. Again, I mean, that doesn't happen very often. So they recovered the onside kick. Probably happened more often back then than it does now, but that's what happened. And so let's take a look. So 26-20. The minute 38, they actually I believe the Cardinals got the ball back. They didn't score from that. Yeah, they did not score. So the Cardinals get the ball back. So this is what happens, kind of like with Preston Pearson. This is Terry Metcalf fumbling the football when really all they had to do was run out the clock. The Niners got the ball back, were able to drive down the field, and then Gene Washington scores on this play here with 37 seconds to go. Joe Reed doesn't complete many passes, but he got this one. And with the extra point, that put them ahead. That was how it ended. So 27-26. So a completely insane day of playoff football for the championship game. Now, unfortunately, the excitement of those two championship games did not carry over into the Super Bowl. The Niners' Cinderella status struck midnight for sure. Raiders, who were heavily favored, actually, it was almost an upset that it wasn't an upset, right? Because there's so many crazy results here in 1974. This one ended exactly how you would expect. Oakland just dominated the game. It was actually tied early on. In fact, it was tied close to halftime. They were tied 7-7. The Niners had scored on a defensive play. Yeah, that's right. It was a defensive fumble return. But then the Raiders scored right before halftime. And then there was this play, which really, I think, was the key play of the game. 23 seconds to go. The Niners are trying to get something going before halftime. Monty Johnson intercepts Reed and returns it all the way for the touchdown to it looked like the Raiders were going to go in up by 7 at halftime, and instead they go up by 14, and then the rest of it was all downhill for the Niners. Raiders would go on to score 21 points in the second half and would win 42-7. They outgained the Niners 490 yards to 99. Niners could not even get 100 yards total offense. So definitely, probably the most dominant performance in the Super Bowl. Might even be the most dominant performance in a championship game, period, so far in my historical career league. So 42-7. Let's see if there's been any others. The Raiders, by the way, that was their first Super Bowl win. It was their third Super Bowl appearance. They lost 2 years in a row in 66 and 67 and 68. Both of those games were blowouts, but nothing like what they laid on the Niners here, 2-7. And all the other games. Most of these games were pretty close. Giants won pretty convincingly over Green Bay in 59. Packers again, 27-7 and 55. But most of the games were relatively close. The very first one wasn't. Rams beating the Browns pretty convincingly, but most of the championship games have been pretty competitive. But this one definitely went against that grain. So 42-7. So that's it for 1974. A strange season. All you have to do is look at the team overall ratings, see where they finished. The NFC East, I think, went exactly according to how it went in real life. No surprises there. But look at the Central. The Vikings, the highest rated team at 67, bested by the Packers. Talked about the 49ers and the Rams. Miami was the other shocker. Miami did not make the playoffs. And you could argue that in real life, the Dolphins were probably at least one of the top 3 teams in the NFL. 1974, they were right there with with Oakland and Pittsburgh, and they did not make it. The Bills were just, they could not overcome the Buffalo Bills. And actually, they finished tied with New England, so a big shocker there. Very competitive division in 74 here. Pittsburgh won as expected, and Oakland won as expected, and Denver got into the playoffs with an 8-6 record. So strange year. They've all been a little bit strange. There's always been an anomaly here and there where one team overperforms or one team underperforms. Usually, it's a combination of one or two. But 74 really took the cake for that. So let's go ahead and let's transition over to 70. See where this takes us. That's our schedule. Postseason format set, ready to go. It's the 75 schedule. Let's look. Make sure the articles are all correct. Good there. That's all good. All right, let's go. All right. Take a quick look. Everybody came over. Okay. All the divisions are the same. All the teams are the same. This will be the last year before the team will expand by 2 teams. Seahawks and Buccaneers come in 76. So this will be the last season with 26 teams. Let's see. Your changes in anyone's look. I get the Giants. They go to the Cisco look in 75. That's really the only change there. Okay, so looked at the career leaders earlier at the end of the last season, so we need to go through that. Let's look at transactions. Okay, so Wallace Francis goes to Atlanta from Buffalo. It's making some moves. They get Jackie Wallace from Minnesota, George Coons from Atlanta. That's a big one. Lloyd Mumford from Miami. Bills get Pat Toomey from Dallas. Dick Washington from 49ers. Bears make quite a few moves. They get Bob Grimm, Steve Schubert, Adam Lee. Not too many big names, just familiar ones, I'd say. Bengals, only a couple moves there. Browns, Reggie Rucker, they signed from England. Leo Miller from the Chiefs. Oh, Preston Pearson, maybe because of that fumble. Moves from Pittsburgh to Dallas. That's going to benefit the Cowboys, though. He's a good player. Lions making some moves here. Quarterback for the Niners in the Super Bowl, Joe Reed, goes to Detroit. There he is. Get Marlon Briscoe. I didn't realize he went to Detroit at some point. John Staggers as well, who was actually on the depth chart as a wideout, but he. Packers. Let's see. Yeah, John Hadle. Packers get John Hadle from the Rams. Actually, I think he was with the Packers in 70. Joined the Packers late in the season. Oilers. Let's see. They get Carl Mock, center. They also get Bubba Smith from the Raiders. Certainly towards the end of his career. The Chiefs get MacArthur Lane. Rams get Tom Dempsey, Ron Jesse. Dolphins get Norm Bulash from Philadelphia. Bob Lee goes from Atlanta over to the Vikings. Back up to Arkenton. Patriots, Steve Zabel, Calhoun, Bob Howard. Saints, let's see, there's Henry Childs from Atlanta. Mentioned last time, I didn't realize he played for Atlanta. He started. Jets get Carl Garrett from the Bears. They get Bob Gresham from the Oilers. They get Steve Davis from the Steelers, so he's actually a running back. Got a lot of running backs. Giants, who big. Get Dave O, Jess Phillips, Paul, Ted Hendricks. It's a big one. Eagles get Art Malone, John Nyland from the Cowboys, Stan Walters from the got a lot of movement and stands out there. 49ers get Bob Hayes from Dallas, Norm Snead from the Giants. Redskins get Dave Butts from St. Louis, Eddie Brown from Cleveland. All right, go to the draft. Steve Bartkowski goes number 1 overall by Atlanta. Randy White goes number 2 to Dallas. Peyton goes number 4, Bears. I'm not sure who number 3 was. Updated in the roster. What other big names we have here? Robert Brazile with Houston. Big Hands Johnson with the Chargers. Let's see, Russ Francis goes to New England. 16 overall. Broncos, Lewis Wright. Cowboys get Thomas Hollywood Henderson. 18 overall. Rams get Doug France. Let's see, big ones. Jackson goes to the Rams. Louis Kelcher, the Chargers. Let's see, Fred Dean goes to the Chargers. Dolphins get Freddie Solomon. Jumps out Danny Buggs. He ends up going to the Redskins. I forgot he started with the Giants. Richard Wood, picked by the Jets. Fuller, Chargers. On the 4th round, Virgil Livers goes to the Bears. Cleveland Elam, San Francisco. Upchurch, taken by the Broncos. Mike Thomas to the Redskins. Steve Grogan to the Patriots. Bob Avellini to the Bears. Young to the Chargers. Leonard Thompson to the Lions. Some players that stick out to me. It's not Ed Too Tall Jones. There. Harper to the Bears. Joe Danello to the Packers. Giants. Doug Plank to the Bears. Herb Scott to the Cowboys. It's all the players that I have as being drafted, and then I've got undrafted free agents. Falcons, Alfred Jenkins. Let's see. Too many big names. That's it. Okay. Let's look at week 1. And as I've done before, we're going to go ahead and quick simulate the first half of the season. Things up in the latter half of the season. So let's go ahead and do it. And let's see how we start out here. So, scoring game. Bears. Cincinnati. Big win where Dallas defeated Rams in overtime. That touchdown in overtime. Robert Newhouse with he didn't have too many 100-yard games in his career. Here's the winning touchdown. Staubach to Pearson. So two teams that I would think are going to be in the playoff hunt. And for Detroit, oh, they're okay, 6-0. So Miami defeats the defending Super Bowl champions. Not a lot of offense in that game. That's not a sign of things to come. Sign of things this season. Or it was 73, I think. Scores. At the way the season was rated and stamped some things there. So hopefully those that are using that one for the first time, I'm sure that one will. I do try to, when I make changes to these seasons, I try to update them so that when you go onto the Steam site, download the updated versions, you'll get the most recent, updates. So the Steelers defeat the Chargers, so they open up with. Look at this one, Houston 37-31 over game there. St. Louis opens up with a big win, 44-7, and this is an upset. New Orleans beating Washington 20-10. So let's see how 2 goes. And Lions go to 2-0. They defeat Atlanta. Oakland gets back in the win column. They win 43-7 over Baltimore. Surprisingly lopsided game. They improve in 75, so we'll see where they end up. Bears lose again. Browns win again. Vikings, so Minnesota is now 1. Cowboys are 2-0. They defeat St. Louis. That's a NFC East. Denver's 2-0. They defeat Bay. Houston goes to 2-0. San Diego winless. Here's another overtime game, 27-21. The Chiefs winning that touchdown. Arthur Lane came over from, I believe, Bay, if I'm mistaken. Scores the winning touchdown. City. Jets. Miami wins again. So the Dolphins off to a good start. Defeat New Orleans. Buffalo upsets Pittsburgh, 21-20 in Pittsburgh. All in real life, I think that was a big game for Jay Simpson. See that he scored any touchdowns here. Let's see how they won. 25 seconds to go. Ferguson hits J.D. Hill. Score. Extra point. Ball game. Simpson dude. He had over 100 yards rushing. Okay. The Rams beat San Francisco 27-7. And here's another overtime game, one on a touchdown. The Giants upset the Redskins. Redskins are 0-2. Maybe the underperformer of the year. Things are looking so far. Let's see how it ends up. Andy Johnson is their quarterback. It's like, so maybe Bill Kilmer, who was their starter in 75, he's hurt. There's the interception in overtime, and on the very next play, Giants win it. Greg Morton in at quarterback. So they win 13-7. And we're going to look at the injuries shortly here. See what's going on. Let's just do that now. Early injuries. Oh boy, Sam Cunningham, Patriots out for the season. That's big. So that's a damper on their hopes. Billy Kilmer is injured. He's going to be out 2 weeks. Expected return in week 5. Bowman Gabriel's out for Philadelphia. So some big ones there in terms of quarterbacking. The NFC East. All right, so let's go to week 3. Let's sim them all. Let's reveal. Atlanta gets in the win column with a big win over New Orleans. Denver defeats Buffalo. That's an upset, 23-21. So they're 3-0. Bills there. Let's see. Lloyd Little, he was playing as late as 75. Pittsburgh defeats Cleveland 9-0. Dallas loses to Detroit 13-0. That's a major upset. Not only that Detroit won and they're now 3-0, but to shut out the Cowboys, that's shocking. There you go. Anyway, Green Bay defeats Miami 45-21. I don't even know what to say about that. That's nuts. John Hadel is making his presence known in Green Bay. 45-21. That's Miami's first loss. Convincing one for sure. Cincinnati wins over Houston. Kansas City wins over San Francisco. The Niners are now 0-3, the defending NFC champions. Rams, Baltimore. Vikings lose again, this time to the Bears, so they're now 1-2. New York defeats New England. So Patriots are now 0-3. But it doesn't help that they don't have Sam Cunningham. Redskins beat Philadelphia. Raiders, San Diego, and the first tie of the season, Giants and Cardinals tying at 13. By the way, the Giants are unbeaten with a record of 2-0-1. So that's a little surprising. Let's go to week 4. After this, we'll look at the standings. Okay, so Baltimore defeats Buffalo. Bengals keep the Patriots winless. Cleveland really defeats Houston. Detroit goes to 4-0. They look like they might be the surprise team of 1975. So let's just see how that all pans out. But they are looking good so far. Stats: Oakland defeats Kansas City. Miami recovers from the previous loss. They defeat Philadelphia. Minnesota evens their record. Bay wins over New Orleans. Dallas loses again, this time in overtime, again to the Giants. The Giants are, again, unbeaten. Greg Morton getting revenge against his former team here. Let's take a look at what happens. Doug Coder in overtime. The rain at, I think this was at Shea Stadium in 1975. The Giants played. There's Coder for the win. All right. Okay. Was that Shea Stadium? Shea Stadium. Not Yankee Stadium. 75. Steelers beat the Broncos, so that's their first loss. Denver's first loss. The Rams defeat San Diego in the Battle of Southern California, 21-13. San Francisco gets off the schneid. They win 40-21, big win over Atlanta. And the Redskins defeat St. Louis 35-17. So that's a big CE. So let's take a look here real quick. Let's look at the standings. Big surprise here with the Giants at 3-0-1. And Dallas, Washington, and St. Louis, all playoff contenders, all kind of struggling a bit, either 500 or less. The Lions seem to be the big surprise so far. Let's see, they got 3 road games coming up. Let's see what they're leading the way there. Joe Reed. How about that? He took the 49ers to the Super Bowl. Not because of him, though. Man, how do you get to unbeaten? 38% completion ratio, but there it is. So I thought Bill. Joe Reed is the starter. Dexter Bussey, Altie Taylor, Charlie Sanders is their leading receiver. Defense looks like it's there Charlie West, Levi Johnson, Slavic, Barney. Okay. I mean, I don't know. See how it all turns out. Rams are comfortably ahead in the West. Miami's ahead in the East. Not surprising there. New England's 0-4. Pittsburgh, Cleveland, and Cincinnati are all tied at 3-1. Oakland and Denver are tied at top the West. See, injuries, a lot more going on now. Let's look at the guys who are out for the season. So far, only Sam Cunningham. A lot of guys are beaten up here. Conrad Dobler with St. Louis, Harold Carmichael, Jeff Seaman, Jerry Sizemore, Julius Adams. New England's decimated with Lydell Mitchell, Colts. It's a big injury. So let's go ahead. We're going to do 3 more weeks here. Finish it up. All right. Buffalo over the Jets, or I'm sorry, over the Giants, 37-7. Oakland, Cincinnati. Green Bay upsets Dallas, so Dallas continues to struggle. Actually, in real life, I think the Packers won by a similar score, which was also an upset. Let's see, Denver defeats Cleveland, so the Broncos continue to be really strong, 4-1, so they're atop the AFC West. The Oilers defeat the Redskins. Redskins struggle. Atlanta upsets Los Angeles. Minnesota loses to Detroit. So it looks like similar teams are again struggling that shouldn't be. Vikings. This is the time. This part of the 1970s, the Vikings were one of the NFC powerhouses. In fact, many would argue that their 75 team might have been their best team, and they're 2-3 right now. That's something. The Colts defeat New England, keep them winless. Miami loses again. They lose to the Jets this time, 21-16. So they're 3-2, but struggling. Pittsburgh defeats Chicago, big, 4-6. City over the Chargers. Chargers are winless. 49ers defeat New Orleans, and St. Louis evens their record. They Philadelphia 17. All right. Week 6. All right. Cincinnati shuts out Atlanta 27-0. Detroit, Buffalo just has Miami's number, which is the opposite of what it was in real life. You recall the Bills went years without beating. Miami had like about a 10-year winning streak with the Bills. And in my historical career, it's almost the opposite. I feel like the Bills just kind of own the Dolphins. Here they win again, 34-7. Miami's now 3-3, and the Bills are cruising right along there. In real life, by the way, the Dolphins did struggle in '75. They were not a playoff team, so should mention that. Vikings even their record. Redskins even their record. Pittsburgh shuts out Green Bay. Houston hands Detroit their first loss, 13-10. It was a low-scoring game. The Broncos win Kansas City. They're now 5-1. Look like they're gonna be a playoff team. Previous season. I've talked before about the Broncos. They're kind of the opposite of the Rams. They're a team that somehow every season that I simulate, whether they were good, bad, or otherwise in real life, they seem to always be there. They're always one of the top teams. It's strange. I don't know why. I don't have any bias towards the Broncos, so when I created these leagues, I went by. I used a very objective. Took a very objective approach. Let's put it that way. Based it on stats. I based it on things that actually happened. Somehow the Broncos, they're a very fortunate franchise in this historical career, and they're continuing to do it here in '75. Rams are 4-2. Patriots are still winless. They lose to San Francisco. Baltimore's 4-2. I think they were 0-2 when they started. So they're on a roll. Cardinals defeat the Giants. Raiders are on a roll. They're 5-1. They keep the Chargers winless, and Dallas loses again. They're 2-4. Chances of them getting to the Super Bowl this in 70 skill losing to the Eagles. All right, so let's go to week 7, halfway point after this week. Finish it up. Therefore, 74-75 transition. Baltimore goes to 5-2. Miami does win here. They beat the Bears. The Bears are 1-6. The Bengals defeat Pittsburgh 25-17. Okay, so both teams are 5-2 now in the AFC Central. Oakland beats Denver. That's a big showdown there. Minnesota defeats Green Bay. Houston beats Kansas City. The Oilers are 5-2. Got a three-way tie for first place there in the AFC Central. The Saints defeat the Falcons 19-16. It's the first season, by the way. This New Orleans is playing indoors at the Louisiana Superdome. The Jets set Buffalo 27-24. Giants win big over the Chargers, and the Giants are looking strong mid-year point with a 4-2-1 record. The Rams defeat Philadelphia. The Lions now 6-1. San Francisco. St. Louis wins over New England, and Dallas defeats Washington. So two teams again. I think were playoff contenders before the season started. Both struggling. Now they're both 3-4, but Dallas gets that win. Washington. So let's go ahead, and this is the 8. That's where we'll pick things up. And let's look at the standings. At the halfway point, Cardinals and the Giants. That's the surprise team. The Giants are 4-2-1. Dallas and Washington are both behind by, I think it's a game and a half, I think. 2.5 games. Both teams have some ground to make up if they hope to defend for a playoff spot. The Lions are way out in front in the Central. That's a surprise. It's like the Vikings may be blowing it again, second year in a row. Rams are still relatively comfortably ahead, but not by much. They're 2 games up on San Francisco in the West. See how they do in the second half. The Colts are surprisingly ahead of everyone in the East, led by Burt Jones. They're a game ahead of both Buffalo and Miami. Mentioned the 3-way tie for first in the AFC Central. And by the way, all 3 of these teams were pretty good in 75, so that's not too far out of bounds. The Steelers obviously were the dominant team. So we'll see how that shakes out. And the Raiders have a 1-game lead over the Broncos. Those are the defending champions, the Raiders. And they, right now, have the best record in football at the halfway point. Tied with Detroit, if you believe that. Ugh, it's crazy. All right, so let's look at the season leaders first. So passing yards is Ken Anderson by John Hadel. Top-rated passer is Ken Stabler. And Pastorini, that's surprising. Staubach, Anderson, Real. Rushing yards, O.J. Simpson, not surprisingly, leads the league rushing, 7 yards a carry, followed by Franco Harris, who has 5.6 yards a carry. Receptions, Charlie Young. I think he was the top players last year too. Bob Tucker. Tight ends there at the top. Total yards again is Charlie Young, followed by Cliff Branch, Jackson. Total yards from scrimmage, O.J. Simpson. Defense. Bill Berge for the second year in a row is being all offensive players and tackles. Sacks, Alan Page, followed by Wally Chambers. A host of others, Curly Culp, Davis, Otis Sistrunk, Pryor. Receptions, 4 of them at the top with 4. Elmendorf, Bob Howard, Bill Thompson, J.T. Thomas of Pittsburgh. All right. Let's look at the Cubs real quick. See how the Cubs are doing. Skip Butler's 9 of 9. It's unusual. 70. Starting to see teams you're starting to see a few more soccer style kickers. Still mostly straightforward kickers, but starting to see that transition here in the 70s. Total points, Tom Dempsey. All right. Injuries again, let's take a look. And Sam Cunningham out for the year. Joe Reed is out for the year for Detroit. So Bronick, he took over for Tom Owen last year in San Francisco. Now he's hurt. And I'm trying to think backup is. I'll take that in a second. O.J. Simpson's injured. So he's going to be out until week 10. Okay. Let's take a look at Detroit real quick. Bill Munson, that's his name. Bill Munson. So he's actually doing a lot better. Joe Reed, so that might be an upgrade. Let's see where Joe at his ratings are all 57. Bill Munson's a 55. So, ratings wise, stats should not look as good as Joe Reed's, but right now they do. So let's see how it's out. Joe Reed's gone for the year, so let's see how well Detroit's able to maintain that record. They got there without really had nothing to do with their quarterback. In fact, if I look at team stats, let's see what's really moving them along. I mean, the rushing. Let's do this. Let's look at season leaders. Let's go to team stats. Total yards. Middle of the road defensively. Offense. Middle of the road offensively. I don't know what's there. They're doing it with mirrors. I don't know. Interesting. All right, let's take a look at week 8. We got Baltimore, Buffalo. That's a big game. That's a potential game to watch. Cincinnati, Denver's a potential game. Feature. Houston at Pittsburgh is a potential one to watch. So, I'll have to think about that one. This was the Monday night game in real. That game, City, Dallas. I might do this ball. We haven't seen the Colts in a long time. Bad for the last few years, so maybe I'll take a look at that. Bills, of course, Simpson's out though. Simpson is out. Cincinnati, why that game just doesn't intrigue me that much. It should, it just doesn't. I'll do Houston, Pittsburgh. I've seen the Oilers in a long time, so we'll do that game in the next video. So, all right, well that's it for this one. Thanks for watching, everyone. Next time.